I, for one, am incredibly grateful for this avenue of communication that you and I have fostered over the past 14 years. Through the comments, DMs, social platforms, sometimes we agree, sometimes we vehemently disagree, but 100% of the time, we show our love for all things four wheels. Except for those instances where there's no other way to put it, we are a dysfunctional group therapy session. We complain like a 13-year-old losing their iPad privileges. But every once in a while, somebody listens, and here's an instance where we have something that's less complex, less weight, and believe it or not, less money. Okay, somewhat confusing because what you and I are looking at is a Mercedes-AMG SL. It's either the 55 or the 63. You would be wrong in both cases because there's a new sheriff in town and one that has half the amount of cylinders. Yes, that is a Mercedes SL that has 4 cylinders. But the 4 cylinders here are very different than 4 cylinders anywhere else. You see, this 4-cylinder, its code name is M139. Why the hell is that important? Well, about a month ago, you and I in this very spot looked at that same engine with a different carrying case in the C43 AMG. And there, yes, it's a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, has all the same bits that other turbocharged 4-cylinder engines have, except for one thing, a turbocharger that has an electric motor in it. So yes, this is sort of a hybrid. It's a mild hybrid system, 48 volt, but not like the 53 series Benz cars that have the electric motor between the transmission and the engine. This has an integrated starter generator motor hanging off the accessory drive. But then back to that turbocharger. There is an electric motor that is connected to the impeller, and it pre-spools the turbocharger to lower the lag of the turbocharger. It worked incredibly well in a C43 AMG, meaning a smaller car. This one, performance-wise, believe it or not, is actually slower than the C-Class. The C-Class was 4.6 to 60. This is 4.8 to 60. But how does it compare to the SL55 and the SL63? Well, those cars, they're about popping in your face. Those are over a second faster to 60. VMAX on those, 183 and something like 195. This is a measly 170. Now, all of these changes do have somewhat of an unexpected impact, and in an area that most SL folks never think about, that would be fuel economy. It moves from abysmal to acceptable, 21, 27, 23 combined. Now, before we put this to the test, a favor. If you find value in these episodes, could you share them? Click the like button and subscribe. Vielen Dank. So here's a surprise. A GT car with a folding top that is from Germany that is not 4,000 pounds. In fact, it's quite a bit less, 3,825 pounds, or depending on express your weights and measures, 1,735 kilograms. Now the obvious question, how does that compare to the 8-cylinder of the same car? It's quite a delta. It's over 300 pounds lighter, and for the avoidance of doubt, I did check with Mercedes. Are those weights dry like the Lamborghini trick? No, that is wet with that Sport Plus mode. Okay, a little bit of a delay there, but oh no. Oh, it definitely wakes up. Oh, it sounds different. This thing is not what you expect at all. Going into it, I looked at the numbers, I'm like, this is going to be like a British car. It's going to be sprightly. That's not the case here at all. It's not about whether it's quick or not. It's not about performance. You know what it's about? Matter of fact, let's do something completely different here. No one behind us. Let's just come to a stop. This is where you notice the difference. When I first got into this car and hit the start button, it sounds different. SLs, you expect them to be supple, especially with the 8-cylinder. And with the AMG 63, you expect it to sound just ridiculous, whether you like those kind of exhausts or not. This, it sounds rough. It doesn't sound supple. That is the biggest negative here, because in reality, it's still, I don't want don't call it a real AMG, let's call it like a halfway AMG. The only time you notice it is from that standstill, and if I'm taking a stab in the dark, it's because there is so much weight it has to motivate. Right about now you're thinking, wait a minute, at the top of this episode you said something about less complex. Well, so far I've sort of sandbagged you. Yes, there's less cylinders in the front, which means there's less weight in the front, but apparently they've gone a step further about reducing the weight, and they have taken the torque to the front wheels away. In other words, this one is only on offer as rear-wheel drive. Now it's here we have to reflect upon an important number we already know. This over 300 pounds lighter than SL55 or SL63. And if we're being pedantic, those two, yes, different output, but it's the same engine, they're just tuned differently. So the weight of the car is about the same. They're about 34 pounds apart if I'm really being pedantic. But then this being 300 pounds lighter, it's more than just 4 cylinders being taken off the nose. So there we have to look somewhere else, and that's the suspension. If you remember, the SL63, that's fitted with a very complex suspension, but not air ride. The 55, it has a standard coil spring setup, but the one we drove had the same as the SL63. This one cannot be fitted with a complex suspension that's in the SL63. This one is on those standard coil springs we see in the SL55, which contribute to the overall weight loss and less complexity. Okay, so if you're taking stock at this point, the engine, it's give and take. Everything else, it's more about you bitched about it and we finally gave you what you wanted, and here, driving dynamics completely different. All those changes we just talked about transforms the car. As a matter of fact, it highlights how good the platform is and kind of makes you excited for what they're going to do with the AMG GT. It's just a more fun car to drive now. Granted, it's slightly slower as we discussed, but it's a different personality altogether. This, as a matter of fact, I can't believe I'm about to say this, it's very un-German. It goes back to like mid-70s, kind of late 60s British era sports cars. Now all is not puppy dogs and roses in the driving dynamics department. Yes, it's still a quick car, quicker than most. And that's why I would very much vote for more brake. There just isn't enough stopping power here. It's a bit too softly sprung in the back. The only other car that reminds me of that is my LC 500 convertible that I also drive in sport mode around town, which I usually don't do with these cars. So rather than playing a round of our favorite game, let's talk about less money. After all, we have less cylinders, less suspension, and less complexity, so there should be quite a bit less money involved. And there you would be correct. That SL63 base price, as a recap, $183,000. This one, a veritable bargain at $109,900. Then we press on to the color, and here a little bit behind the scenes. This was supposed to be Manufacture Moonbeam White for an additional $3,250. That car conveniently got lost, so we got this one where we didn't have to pay extra for Alpine Gray. It's interesting, but I wouldn't go for it. I would say the Starling Blue, that is the stunning color. The interior of this, I don't really know what to call that. They say it's red. I say it's somewhere on a spectrum between red and orange and lipstick. I've had people come out of the woodworks, mostly women, that say, oh my God, I love the interior of that car. Actually, comments below, do you like that interior? Then we have to have a brief discussion about the roof. This one is black, the white car had a red top. However, when I went online to see what's available with what, I'm thinking it's a Mercedes, and you can custom make any combo you want. Apparently you can't. If you get the black roof, you can get the red interior, but with the red roof, you can't get a red interior or any other color interior except for black. Can we fix this? Because after all, it's still a Mercedes SL, even though it's the cheapest. Then we press on to the AMG Night Package. That is the black trim, $750. I'd say it works with the Alpine Gray, although really not my speed. Then we go on to the AMG Track Pace app, $250. Then the head-up display, believe it or not, that is optional here. $1,100. The car is still 110 grand, so can we make that standard? Then we have to bounce back to the roof, because if we're talking less complexity, that first applied to the 63 and the 55, because that's what ushered in the whole renaissance of a soft top with the SL. Now, the technical reason was to lower the weight high in the car. If you ask me, I think the soft top looks prettier. Then you can customize things more. We already talked about the exterior color of the roof you can change, but you can also do that with the inside, the headliner. This one has been spec'd with a black headliner, which you have to pay $1,600 extra for. I would say the same thing about the head-up display as the headliner. Can we not make that optional? Then we have to pay an additional $1,950 for the driver's assistance package. In Mercedes parlance, that is level 2 autonomy. Although you need to check out my level 3 episode with the Mercedes. They're the first one that is offering a car legal for sale in California, Nevada, and Germany that is compliant with SAE level 3. Either way, the only thing we have to pay extra for is the destination handling, which has recently gone up to $1,150 von Bremen, Deutschland, and that brings us to a total retail price of $120,635. Put another way, that is about the same price as a basic 911 with a couple of options, and that is very much by design, because if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, since the last time you and I looked at an SL, the 55, Mercedes-AMG has shown their new AMG GT, which is pretty much this car with the roof. So I wouldn't be shocked to see a cheaper hardtop version of this. Okay, so let's you and I roll back to comfort mode and have a discussion about technology, specifically technology solutions. I take my hat off to Mercedes for doing this whole electric motor inside of a turbocharger to lower the boost. Now in 2 solutions, we've seen it works pretty well. But in a C-Class, that's a different application than this kind of car. I would argue there was a choice here. You could do this 4-cylinder engine, which probably was the more prudent financially in terms of solutions to go with. Or you could have taken the 53 series engine, the 3-liter inline 6 that they do in a lot of different Mercedes, which you and I have tested to great effect. Excellent torque, excellent delivery of power. That solution, I would argue, would have been a better choice here, especially with the amazing change in driving dynamics going to just rear drive. So really the question is, why didn't they do that? I would argue probably cost, but also the fuel efficiency, really the tailpipe emissions from that engine moving forward in Europe as they tighten restrictions. It's probably why they didn't do it, but I would challenge them. Update that engine, put it in this solution, maybe even do a stiffer suspension setup, and that would be like a middle-of-the-road solution between a 43 and a 55 that would be full-fat AMG, but probably the best balanced car of the lineup. Okay, so what have you and I learned today? Most obvious, this is far better than expected, but simultaneously, it's a very odd brew of GT car. The whole thing here is getting past the sound and the feel of that engine. Once you do, it delivers beyond expectations, which brings us to the wish list. And here I'm gonna ask for a lot. By seeing and experiencing this suspension with a lower weight of no all-wheel drive and the lower weight of the folding roof as opposed to a hardtop, I think the real goal here is take that E-Series 53 engine we talked about, put it in the rear drive car, stiffen the suspension, maybe do some more light weighting, and make it like a club sport version. And going a step further, do the same thing in the coming AMG GT, which is effectively the same car. But I'm one man, and this is the point of the episode that I turn around to you guys to opine in the comments below, or via our social media, Motoman TV all one word, Motoman TV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, if you got value out of this episode, I would highly suggest you watch our Living with a BMW M2 Automatic episode. I went to Florida for 10 days, drove it all around the state, took it to the gas station, took it to the BMW dealer, even give you details of the cost of wearable items. Matter of fact, we got to do the same thing with this car because the fuel economy, it said it was going to be in the mid-20s. Driving like we did today, I did 13.1, but that's a story for another day. If you want to see that BMW episode with the M2 in Florida, click here. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.